Hello, hello. As Laura said, I am Eva Kraus. I am staff editor at Worth Media, and I am so excited to be moderating this panel on sustainable fashion. It is something that I feel personally very passionate about, and I am joined by some truly incredible women who are making great strides in this space. You guys can introduce yourselves better than I ever could. So just very quickly, since we only have 20 minutes to get into this conversation, I was hoping you could all take a minute to tell us who you are, where you work, and what you do. Caroline, can we start with you?
Sure. Ava, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. My name is Caroline Brown. I'm a managing director at Closed Loop Partners. We are an investment firm focused on development of the circular economy. Prior to Closed Loop Partners, I spent several decades on the operational side of the apparel industry, so had the opportunity to see firsthand some of the challenges and the unique opportunity to bring circularity to this sector. I lead our growth equity investment practice.
Hi, thank you. I am Kristy Caylor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 4Days. 4Days is really building a circular economy for fashion. We work with Closed Loop, so very aligned there. But our platform is a recycling and rewards platform. So we reward customers for recycling any used clothing in any condition. We give them a reward that they can spend across our network of retailers. And so it's creating this virtuous cycle around the end of life of clothing. Recapturing that value and recycling it. Similarly, spent my career in the fashion industry at very large companies in startup land, and have just seen firsthand the imperative, the need for new business models to help drive real lasting change.
CMO of Rebag. Rebag is a reseller of luxury goods, primarily focused at the very high end of the sector on accessories like handbags, jewelry, and watches, really focusing on items that are investment pieces that retain their value over and over again and can be cycled through different customers over time. We push circularity in a much different way in the resale space, but there's a lot we do that we can get into later around incentivizing our customers to be both buyers and sellers in the resale space.
Enjoy fashion. It brings lots of happiness in the shopping experience. It also happens to have one of the heaviest environmental footprints of any sector in the world. So accountable for 6 to 8% of global landfill, 8 to 10% of GHG emissions, and about 20% of water waste. So an outsized environmental footprint. So the opportunity to bring circularity that requires a business model that keeps those materials in play and offers reuse opportunities for consumers and companies alike can help address some of those enormous challenges.
It's such an incredible point, and we actually have an example of that here on stage in the form of 4Days. And Kristy, I was hoping you could walk us through the structure of your organization and what your Take Back program looks like to really help minimize the amount of landfill waste that is being produced from the fashion industry.
Absolutely. So I like to ask this question in a room, who here has too much stuff? Right? So everybody, because Caroline mentioned we have a linear economy that sold us more and more and more and more and didn't take responsibility or help us take responsibility for what happens next.
And I'm sure if you're living in New York, you're very acutely aware of this problem.
And I think the reuse component of products when we're finished is very, very essential in the circular economy principles, and in high value and durable goods, there are channels for those. But typically when I talk to people, we all have kind of that pile. And it's like those single socks and pit stain t-shirts, and just what do you do? And so what we've found is intervening at that stage where we help you take care of those things that are very difficult to find a responsible home for. That's our Take Back bag. And it's really about buying into kind of a service and a behavior. It is a product, but customers purchase it from us, fill it up with anything from any brand in any condition, send it back to us for recycling. We have a reverse supply chain that takes care of it, sorts it and grades it up to 215 grades. 95% of it stays out of landfill, so finds a second home. But we reward the customer back with closet cash. So it's a really great experience of kind of this like joyful relationship to getting rid of stuff you didn't know what to do with, that's starting to initiate just a repeatable behavior and a relationship to circular economy in a way that's typically been difficult.
So basically the example of what we want the entire industry to do, but you're doing it on a much smaller scale, and it's something that we can all participate in now, which is really exciting. You mentioned the single socks and the pit stain t-shirts, but on the other end of that, in terms of sustainable fashion, what we have traditionally seen is the resale of products that are in great condition. And Elizabeth, you have a really interesting take on this, and I would love to get your expertise on when we are looking at reselling our products, what are some of the technologies and what are some of the mindset shifts we need in order to make sure that we're purchasing as consciously as possible?
Yes, I think there's two parts of your question. I think the first one on the technology and tools that sort of inform our purchasing behavior is something we focused a lot on. We actually built some tools that we hope customers use both in shopping resale, but also in shopping on the primary market to make better investment decisions. So we have something called Claire AI, where you can literally swipe your phone in front of a handbag in a Chanel store, for example, as if you're swiping a QR code, and you can get the value of that bag today. So similar to almost like a Kelley Blue Book, where you can know the value of a car when you drive it off the lot. You know, it depreciates in value the second you drive it off the lot, but how much value are you losing? And so this hopefully will help people make smarter decisions on the primary market and understand the potential resale value of the decisions that they're making today. So that's one of the ways in which we utilize technology to help educate and inform customers to make smart buying decisions and think of their decisions, especially of these high value items, as real investments. Another thing that we've done in terms of playing into the circular economy is also we have various incentivization schemes to make sure our customers aren't just buyers or aren't just sellers, but that we're closing the loop, really, that we're building the circular economy. So we have two programs at play here that are really important. One is something we call trade, and it's when you can buy and sell in one transaction. And we can do this other than other resale sites or other resale programs because we buy a lot of our inventory outright. So we can buy something from you and sell something from you in one transaction. We can incentivize that. Also, there's tax benefits in most states for that. So like a trade-in of a car, for example, you don't pay tax on the difference between the value. We also have something called exchange, which is uniquely for Rebag purchase products, where we have a guaranteed buyback price. So we say, hey, if you want something more seasonal, let's say, or for an event, rather than renting it, you can own it today. We find when people own things, they often take better care of them than when they rent them. So own it, treat it as an investment piece. If it stays in the same quality and condition, and you sell it back to us within 3 months, 6 months, a year, we have guaranteed buyback amounts. So again, trying to keep that inventory at play within our ecosystem at all times.
It's actually so incredible to hear the range of options that are now out there. And I think as sustainable fashion continues to grow within our culture's lexicon, we're hearing this word all the time. But the reality is that the back end of it is actually extremely complex. And Caroline, I would love to dive in with you to talk about some of the challenges in terms of actually creating the system, because sometimes it can be like, oh, well, that's so simple. Why don't we just do that? But the reality is that there's actually a lot of reasons why we don't just do that.
It's a very good point. And when consumers look at circular economy topics, they tend to focus on seeing a product. So often that's how we define end of life of a product, which is what's so fantastic about the resale area. But there's a lot that happens in the earlier stages of the value chain in the fashion industry that has opportunity to take advantage of circularity as well. So if you look at, for example, how a product is made, what happens in the design room. You don't have to worry about waste if you take waste out of the design, merchandising, and manufacturing process. So smart technologies that can replace physical product in that stage are growing very quickly. I know AI is a word none of us can get away from. This is a huge impact in terms of the sector as well. You look at smart material use. So if you have a material that will biodegrade rather than live in a landfill for 800 years, or even, we don't know how long, it could be 2,000 years, we have no idea. But you look at using smart materials, using them in a wise way, implementing of transparency tools in your product, which will allow you to see how they're made, where they're made, and you can't fix the problem within supply chains if you can't see them to make them cleaner, leaner, more efficient, more environmentally friendly. And then the whole area of sort of recapture of product that both of these two are involved in, repair of product, re-commerce of product, and advanced recycling are really critical. One other just quick point is the circular economy is not only good for environment, it's also good for business, right? So if you use the business model correctly, instead of spending a bucket of money to mine your raw materials and throw them out after one use, you can mine your raw materials, use them, get them back, use them again, get them back, put them back into the beginning of your supply chain. This is a bigger financial impact than I think, a general consumer can see from the outside.
In terms of transparency, why is the fashion industry so far behind compared to other industries?
Okay, a couple of variables. Since we only have 5 minutes, I'm going to say it really fast. The fashion industry is one of the largest industries on the planet today. It touches everyone I know, probably everyone knows here, I hope. And it's almost wholly unregulated. So that's incredibly unusual. And what the result has been is that it's an incredibly layered supply chain. What it takes to make a sneaker is completely different from what it takes to make a bag. Without regulatory environment or transparency, it's been ripe for a culture of subcontracting all along the way. So you may contract with one factory, your shoe may actually end up being made 4 factories down the chain, right? And this is why it's such an exciting opportunity as investors, because all of these problems need to be solved. And so the solutions are as innovative as they are exciting and robust.
That's such a good point. And oh gosh, I wish we had more time because I have so many questions about this. Kristy, I wanted to get to one more question for you before I ask a general question for all of you. Sorry. You have done an incredible job of building this model that is functional, and it's what we're all aiming toward. And I was wondering if you could talk to one or two of the key challenges you faced and how you overcame them.
Yeah, and I think the challenges lie in the fact that circularity is really a system solution. And so it touches so many points of the consumer journey and also the supply chain. And I think there's a lot of more shared knowledge around upstream supply chain, the materials we're using to put into products. The reverse supply chain, when we entered this conversation, was relatively untouched. And so just figuring out, one, the consumer experience to get people to do this, it's not always the most obvious first pass. What are they attaching value to? And we've discovered that's actually in the behavior itself, like helping deal with all that stuff. But that isn't necessarily the easiest thing to figure out until you're in market and you're figuring it out. So figuring out the customer experience, super critical and difficult. The reverse supply chain was something we had to build and put together and do that efficiently and in a way that's economically
viable. Just a small thing.
It's no big deal. And I always laugh. I'm like, we know we figured it out because we made all the mistakes on the path to here. She's seen most of them. And because it just doesn't exist. And so you think about like what goes from where to where, and then who touches it, and then where does it go, and how do we trace it, and how do we report, and how do we make sure we're doing what we're doing authentically and with real impact. And so that's something we had to build.
Thank you so much for that answer. This can feel like such a massive problem, but the reality is that consumers are a massive part of the equation. And so I wanted to ask each of you, what is one thing consumers can do or stop doing to help push us toward a more circular, sustainable economy when it comes to sustainable fashion? Elizabeth, can we start with you?
Sure. It's interesting in terms of sustainability in the resale industry. We're inherently a more sustainable option than buying on the primary market, but we don't overly push sustainability as a reason why you should buy from us. I think there's plenty of reasons why you can look to resale. But we try and do what we can, as I mentioned before, to educate customers to always make smart buying decisions. And for us in the luxury space is really thinking about all of your buying decisions as investments. So there's a few things we do. One, every year we publish a report that's almost like tracking luxury goods like the stock market. We look at what brands are trending. Maybe a designer has left a house and that means that the value of those products have gone down. Maybe Chanel has increased their prices on the primary market, or Dior has. And because of that, your Dior bag from years ago actually has come in popularity. Or there's a new item that's come out on the primary market that resembles a vintage version. So we try and educate customers that, hey, what's sitting idle in your closet actually has some value. So first look inward, see what you have to see if there's a potential to capitalize on that investment and trade it in and get something new maybe if you want. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, with our AI tool, we're trying to educate customers when they're making that next primary market decision, when they're in the Chanel store, when they're in a Louis Vuitton store, when they're buying their Rolex. What's going to be that value of that piece in a year? If I buy it now and I think about it as an investment, I'm more likely to take good care of it, which is important for resale. I'm more likely to think about it as something that maybe I don't necessarily need today. I can sell it in the future. I can extend its life. Also, I think for brands, this is a really important area. Very, very difficult for luxury brands that have really built themselves on being an opaque market and not really being transparent at all. So we are doing a lot to try and encourage brands and just encourage the industry in general to be more transparent from a pricing and value standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Oh, I wish we had more time. These are such amazing answers. Can we jump to you, Kristy?
Sure, yeah. I say this for kind of design-oriented thinking and then also customer thinking. Like, think about the end at the beginning, meaning when you're making a purchasing decision, like, oh, what is this made of? Where could it go after I'm finished? How long will I use it? And that actually just starts the conversation around durability, quality, value. And it doesn't mean you have to buy expensive things. There's some inexpensive things that you use for years and years and years. And then I think try these new models on for size and see what fits, because there are various options and they all look and walk and talk slightly differently. And I think it's about finding something you can do. It's kind of like
yourself
exercise.
A take bag from 4 days.
Yeah, try it on, see if it fits. See if it's a workout you can commit to, because I think every step in participation is a great step forward.
Thank you so much. Caroline, how about you?
So quickly, building on the data point that on average, a garment that is sold in America is worn 6 times before it gets put in the garbage. Even if you can six, sometimes less. That's the average. So if you can extend that even to 10, it is a massive difference. And then I would just, come back to what these ladies have said as well, is shop your closet sometimes, right? There's great stuff in there. And, even if you shop resale 1 out of 10 times that you buy something, it will have a huge impact. And resale's fun, a little addictive, but fun.
Thank you so much, ladies. It was such a pleasure to speak to you today.